I'm Joe Flood with Joe Flood Insurance, protecting what matters.
And I'm Chad Latour from Flood Risk Solutions, where innovation meets flood coverage.
And this is the Flood Brothers Podcast,
We'll guide you through flood insurance trends.
and keep you dialed in on market changes. Well, Chad, before we really start, our new podcast here, we definitely do want to acknowledge the lives lost in the floods in central Texas, and certainly it's something that we haven't seen like this before. But flash flooding, and the protection of both life and property is something we see every day in our job. But
Absolutely.
this is certainly an extreme example of that. So we want to just make sure that we acknowledge that this is devastating to not just Texas but the whole country. I have people that
Absolutely.
directly know people that are missing. So definitely our thoughts with those in Texas.
Yeah, well said.
Chad, how are you?
What's going on? Good. How are you?
Great. I want to thank you for coming together here for what should be the best podcast in flood insurance.
That's
I
right.
don't know how many there are, but we certainly will make it the best.
Might
So
be
I
one of the
want,
first. I don't know.
yeah, could be, could be. I haven't seen a lot out there, and I think when you and I were thinking about, doing this, the one thing that we wanted to make sure that we did was get information about what is going on today in the marketplace.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy marketplace. It's changing all the time. It's a marketplace that at least I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll get into it here as we go into this podcast, but it's crazy just thinking back. Gosh, I've been in it 23 years and the amount of changes is just incredible. There's never a dull moment. That's for sure.
Never. Yeah, never a dull moment. And on that note, I think what we wanted to do today for listeners and viewers of the podcast is to give them a little bit about our backgrounds, kind of how we met and worked together in the industry. And I'll kind of let you go first because I know you have a
Yeah.
really interesting background, not just in insurance, but you were in the Navy, right? Way back.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, way back when I had hair. So yeah, actually, I do have a unique background. I went into the military straight out of high school. And crazy enough, I was a cook in the military, and somehow I ended up in insurance. Never even thought about insurance. Obviously, like most people at a young age, don't really know exactly what it is. You know, you have to have it in many cases. So yeah, I was in the military for about 6 years in the Navy and left the military and went into the financial space. Worked for a small company called Capital One. Back then, they
Yeah,
actually came out with that. Yeah, what's in your wallet was right around the time I started, and that thing has just held on for years now. That
wow.
tagline was great. So yeah, did that for gosh, I don't know, probably 10 years or so. Then got into real estate for a little bit, and my brother actually was in the insurance business, and ended up talking with him after kind of going through some challenges in the real estate market. Took a tank for a little bit, and I was looking for other opportunities, and ended up landing in insurance and started with Bankers way back when, gosh, 20 or 2002 roughly. And Bankers ended up selling their flood book over to a company called Fidelity at the time, and ended up just basically taking over a marketing position there and worked inside for a couple of years and then ended up taking over an outside sales position and really have had a ton of fun. So many opportunities in this business. It's been incredible. But I'm one of the few that, came into the insurance space in flood and ended up staying in that lane. So here I am 23 years later. It's crazy.
Wow. 23
Yeah,
years.
I know.
Not many people
This
I
means I'm
know
old.
last yeah. Yeah, now you're dating yourself.
I know.
Not, not many people I know, have lasted more than a couple of years in a specific specialty. They find
Right.
themselves kind of bouncing around to do different things or moving to different careers. And but the one common thing that I found, and it's exactly how you started, where your background is in flood specifically, nobody set out to be here. I find that
Right.
very interesting.
Right. Yeah. The same thing could be said about insurance in many cases, right? Let alone flood insurance specifically.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting field because I think I'm surrounded by many people who
mhm.
found their way here, never really had a direction to get right in.
Yeah. But it's just again, flood insurance, there's so many changes. There's always something going on, new markets, changes to the program. So it definitely keeps you engaged and there's always something to learn in this business. So it doesn't really get stale, in my opinion. And there's so many different avenues to pursue. Whether you want to go underwriting, marketing, you name it, there's opportunities. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's where,
tell
and
me.
it's interesting because my background started because of a market change, and I think we all
Mhm.
know and are still dealing with the ramifications of the Bigger Waters Act in 2012. So that
Oh yeah.
act, yeah, that's where I dove in, right, to
Yeah.
flood insurance, and in a way that I didn't even really expect because I had actually been involved way back. You went back to your time in the Navy, right? I was just probably a little blip on the radar back then. But when I started in the industry in general, and I say industry because I didn't start in insurance when it came to flood. My background back in 2010, believe it or not, this is 15 years for me in this space. So for me, that feels like a long time. You're 20 something years, so you've obviously
Right.
got
Right.
time on me, but yeah, 15 feels like a long time. But I, started actually getting involved in local politics in my hometown. And at the time, I just wanted to get involved in something. And I didn't have any, I was going to school at the time for architecture and I got my degree in
Hmm.
architecture, but I didn't really, think I just wanted to be involved in a local issue. Well, right about my hometown, Marshfield, Mass, right on the ocean, had just had a seawall collapse. So, of
Oh
course,
wow.
that was the hot topic. Hundreds of people were coming to meetings about it, and the board of selectmen looked at me and they said, "Hey, here's this 21-year-old kid. He's looking to get involved in a local issue. Let's put him on the seawall committee." Okay, now I think in their minds they thought architecture translates to, seawalls, which it doesn't. That's an engineering job, not an architectural
Right.
job. You don't see any beautifully built seawalls. They're just engineered,
Right.
right? Engineered minds
Exactly.
go into those. So I remember I was at the meeting, the first meeting of in 20, what was that, 2010, first meeting of the Seawall Committee, and it's me and the seven other board or eight other board members in a room, and it was our first meeting, 100 people in the room, and I said, okay, someone here has to step up and be chair. Who wants to be chair of the committee? And every single one of them looked at me and they go, you. And I was like, okay, and I was
You were the newbie.
blunt. Yeah, I was the newbie. Everyone else had been there, and that was my first meeting, and I was immediately made chair. So, without going into all the minutia that happened over those 2 years, the board
Hmm.
eventually was dissolved, and I still felt the need to have people educated about coastal infrastructure. So in 2012, I started the Massachusetts, well, at the time, Marshfield Coastal Coalition. And I'll
Hmm.
never forget, it was the end of 2012, and I had no idea what was going on legislatively. And a woman walked in, older woman walked in and put an envelope down on the table, and it was this thick. And she goes, "This bill will kill affordability for flood insurance." I said, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. I was coastal infrastructure. And sure enough, that was the Bigger Waters Act.
Yeah.
And that threw us into, at the time, our town because we were also getting remapped. Well, if you remember, Biggert Waters not only phased out
Oh
discounts,
yeah.
but went to actuarial rates. So when our base flood elevations were jumping 10 feet and you had discounts getting phased out
Oh yeah.
anyways, it was a mess. You remember those good old
Well,
days, Chad?
oh, I do. I remember clear communications.
Ah,
That's what I remember coming out of Biggert Waters, and it was anything but clear. And I didn't even
correct.
mention, I'm in Florida, so I was at what they called ground zero for Biggert Waters because I'm born and raised in Florida, grew up in Pinellas County, which is, they were just thrown into, like you said, just huge rate increases. People were like, how can I afford this? Homes were selling. It was just a complete mess, which thankfully they ended up backing out of it, right? And kind of put in that
Yeah,
phased in approach. So yeah,
yeah.
like we said,
20
never a dull moment.
That's right, the 2014 reforms,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what I loved about once we were thrown into that discussion was what I loved about the space was I learned all of a sudden that my architectural background could be used on elevated homes or non-elevated, right? The foundations and how that works. And so
Right.
I kind of dove, like I started out saying, I dove in head first into the insurance side of the business when I realized that you could save people money by doing certain things to their buildings, which started to translate some of that knowledge I had started out with into the insurance space. And the
Right.
rest, as they say, is kind of history. I've been, a real kind of like you, and not just in the space of flood, but an enthusiast in the space, if there is such a thing as a flood
Absolutely.
enthusiast.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's kind of how we met too, right? Like we met at a
That's
flood
right.
conference and we've both been in the business. I don't think we ever really crossed paths until roughly, 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, it's crazy how this industry, it's big, but it's small at the same time, right? Like
Right.
you go to the flood
That's
conference and you see a lot of people that, have been in this business a long time. And for one reason or another, people get into flood insurance, but they don't get out.
right. Like
So I
California,
tried.
right? You tried. Yeah,
So,
it's that's very true.
well,
Well, I think one of the cornerstones of this podcast is that the goal is for these to be kind of short and sweet, right? We want to make sure
yeah.
people get a lot out of it in a short amount of time because, as you and I both know,
Mhm.
we don't have a lot of time in our lives because of all the stuff going on with our businesses and the industry and our families and
Right.
all the related stuff. And we want to make sure that others get the same out of the podcast. Well, Chad, we're getting to the end of the podcast here. If you can believe our time's just about over. And you and I had talked about ending our podcast with talking about an account, different, strange, difficult to place, something where we can talk a little bit about the account to not only give hope to people that might think that there's accounts that they might not be able to place and they might be able to, but also to kind of talk about what we are seeing directly in the industry right now, something that's kind of new or exciting or different. So I'll let you go first. Tell me something interesting
Absolutely.
account that you wrote recently.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. So yeah, again, I live down here in Florida, so I see a lot of risk coming in from Florida, especially in the path of the storms last year. So I have a risk that was in Tampa, had a major flood, of course, from Helene in 2024, and they basically had NFIP and excess flood. The excess flood has been canceled. I've shopped the market through multiple carriers. Nobody wants to touch it, obviously, with having penetrated their entire NFIP layer. So, in talking with the client, I threw out the real only option is parametric at this point. So parametric's fairly new, as you know, to the residential space, but it is an option nonetheless, and we're pursuing that. So don't have the quote back yet, but we're definitely going to be able to quote it, so he can better protect his home since, NFIP obviously is not enough coverage with being capped at 250,000. So I think this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, with where this parametric is going. So it's great to be able to provide an option where there really wasn't one in the past for a situation like this. So that's my
Wow.
crazy one for the week that I'm working on. So,
Wow, that's interesting. Parametric, to your point, is kind of new in the space overall for the
hmm
retail space, but it certainly gives hope, like you were saying, to something that would seem
right.
very difficult to write. Um, well, I'm working on one. It's interesting. I'm working on one now that appeared really difficult and was really difficult, but the markets came together to make it happen. Right now we're seeing a massive amount of builders risk. It makes me happy to know that the country is growing and people are building,
hmm
and it helps our business and it helps everyone. Um,
Right.
so we're seeing a lot of that, and we had an account where there were about 20 buildings being built kind of on the fringe of a AE zone, and they didn't want to buy NFIP per building. They just wanted a $500,000 deductible. So kind of a
hmm
very different way of looking at it. The lender and the builder and everybody was kind of in agreement that they would go that route. And we were able to kind of get that deductible approved and still write excess over the 500K per building deductible. So kind of a different way
Yes.
of solving the problem. We were able to write an account where it might have been more difficult if they just didn't have any type of underlying at all. And then, a lot of times companies or carriers don't like those self-insured retentions. So
Right.
point. You and I had also talked about having some guests on the show. You
Yes.
and I have names and
People are going
topics
to
that
get
we
tired of
want
us.
that I think they might already be. They have topics and names of people that we want on
Yeah,
the show, but we also want the listeners and the viewers to tell us what they want to hear
exactly.
and the guests that they want on the show. So
hmm
at the end of the show, we're going to put up as our closing each week a screen, an image with all the social tags to the show, Flood Brothers, and how you can reach out or comment on the show or send a message. And so do that, please, and let us know what you want to hear. And who knows, your topic may end up getting featured. Well, thanks everyone, and Chad, thanks for talking this week, and we'll get back together in a couple weeks and have our
Yeah,
listeners
thank you as well.
see what they have to say. Yeah, awesome. Thanks
Yeah, no,
everyone.
this is great.